Welcome, 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 welcome. Okay, so the topic I want to talk about today is the topic of manifesting your life vision. Now, this is quite a substantial topic. It's a relatively new topic for me. I've kind of shied away from this topic for years just because of the loadedness of the word manifestation. But in the course of my work, it's just coming to the fore where people who have done healing, who have done bliss with me, they're kind of pushing against the boundary of what I've de facto set. And they're advancing is the wrong word, but they're kind of like discovering things. They're absorbing so much of what I'm teaching and sharing that they're bumping up against the doors that I kind of haven't really opened because I'm lazy. I don't want to talk about those things. And they're kind of asking about like, well, if this, then doesn't that imply these other things? And I'm like, well, yeah, I mean, I guess, yeah, I don't really talk about that. And my long-term advisors are like, oh, really? Why not? So I've kind of been pushed into this direction very gently, very lovingly, and I appreciate all my advisees for that. I think it's time to say a little something about this topic. So throughout our live sacred space sessions together, even in this series, we have touched on the topics of the muse, of finding your bliss and meaning and purpose in life, of the golden thread, of the crone and wise woman, even from last week, and a number of other related topics. So in today's session, I want to try and pull some of these together just very briefly to just give a basic high-level thumbnail of how to actually make some of this stuff happen in practice. We're like waxing poetic about the muse and the golden thread and your vision and purpose in life, but how do we use some of these principles to actually create, implement, make happen, and of course, manifest is like kind of a catch-all word, to manifest your life vision in an overall way. Now, as I've said, this is a huge topic. There are specifics around how this works in detail. And then there are specifics around how to do this in each specific area of your life, in career, in relationships, in money, in body, with family, with kids, in the political realm, in the spiritual realm, right? Each area of life will have its own connected but distinct dimension of your life vision, right? Your life vision isn't just your career. It impacts how you raise your family. It impacts how you are involved in the body politic, right, of your society or nation. And each area will have its own pattern, archetype, and mythopoetics as well, right? And all of these are ideally integrated, right? So the patterns and mythopoetics and how you think about the philosophy, the life vision and values, the bliss, right? The reason why you're on the earth. There will be an overall pattern to your life, but then there will be sub-patterns specific to everything I just said with regard to career, relationships, money, which is separate from career, right? Body, family, kids, political, spiritual. And then these ideally will combine to form your overall life vision. And this then is the blueprint, the pattern along which your innate powers of manifestation then follow. Now, it sounds complicated, but really what it is when we kind of do this in intensive practice, it's just a bunch of reflection, right? It's just a bunch of like auditing, assessment of all the other areas of your life. Because the point is, de facto, right? De facto, in reality, you're already doing this. It's just a question of how much of a plan there is. Are you like cooking, just throwing random ingredients in the pot? Or are you like, I like savory, I like a little bitterness in my whatever, and you're managing it? Or are you cooking rigidly to like a preset recipe, right? And there's no right or wrong answer. It's just, how are you cooking the different areas of your life, and are you okay with that? Are things tasting good? Are they nourishing you? So here then, I'll just try to give a very high level of it, so you can start to think about how to do this in your life. You already have a lot of the component pieces conceptually with all the sessions, even from beginning, the difference between punishment and transformation from the very first session, like 20 sessions ago. And so what I want to do here is to talk about manifesting your life vision. Let me put up, we'll do a little nerdy slide share. So when we think about manifestation, manifesting your life vision, there's really two parts, right? There's the life vision part, which is what you want your life vision to be. And then there's the manifestation part, which is how do you make that life vision appear around you in the life of the world around you, as per your desires, right? When we talk about life vision, we want to talk about, first of all, what is a life vision, right? How do we think about what is my life vision? And the first thing to really note here is that there are three levels of life vision. And we've talked about these three levels before, but never as like the three levels of life vision itself. And the three levels are basically, need, want, and desire. Hopefully you can see my writing as well. And if not, please let me know. So need, want, and desire. Need is obviously, sort of survival. Decisions made out of necessity. Okay. And when we say necessity, I'll make a distinction between necessity and fear. Want is more decisions made based on fear. Because, there's fear here also, obviously, when you can't eat, when you're fear for your safety and physical sort of security. But what tends to happen, and I'm just generalizing here, but what tends to happen here is that when you have an issue in terms of like, okay, I have no idea where my next meal is coming from, it is fear, but it hits a much deeper level. Sort of very deep scripts start to kick into play. Because here, when we talk about, let's say you have fear over, not getting a promotion, right? And if you don't get the promotion, well, you're not going to starve, no one's going to kill you, but you will lose prestige. So you have fear around that, where my wound of like being humiliated or fearing being shamed is going to get poked, and I'll feel like I'm not worthy of love anymore, right? And that's a very huge fear. But automatic scripts will come into play, but not quite at the same severity as it will happen over here. So that when people talk about, well, I don't know where my next meal is coming from, I actually, ironically, it's like, well, let's try to get you the help you need. But beyond that, it's more, when it's at that level, I guess what I'm trying to say is, you almost can relax, because at that point of desperation, you will do whatever you need to do. What I'm saying is, it will get done at that point. It will get done. Right, at the furthest extreme, if you need to like walk over other people, steal bread, knock over a bank or a convenience store in order to get that meal you need, you will do that, right? You will do that. Certain deeper programs will like trigger, and it will just it's still you doing it. If you commit a crime, it's still you that goes to jail, but it's something that's almost beyond you, that's bigger than you, that is part of a collective chassis or instruction set that we all get as not just humans, but living beings, okay? So that's what I would call the level of need, and we all have that. The level of want is more at the level of wounding. And this is everything we talk about when we talk about healing. The wounds you have, body image, all the things that like make you feel not worthy of love. And want is around all the things we do to try to reduce that pain. Soothing, drinking, numbing, and then shielding. So soothing, numbing, drinking, distraction, sex, relationship. Shielding, prestige, anger, silence, poker face, all of this stuff. So want is in this area. This is necessity. This is fear. What is this fear? This is the fear of not being worthy of love. That's the greatest fear of all. right? That's a greater fear in some ways than fear of loss of life. Right? Because when people truly feel they're not worthy of love, they feel that deep in their bones. That will often lead some people to ending their lives. Right? So we know that this overrides this in certain extraordinary cases, right? Or it can. Right? So it's not a sort of set hierarchy. This is a very dynamic back and forth kind of thing. So that's need and want. So these two are need and want. And I would argue, right, that kind of 80% of normal life is lived here. If you're a chakra person, right, this is sort of chakra 3, Manipura. On down, right? This is like the red. This is like right here is like chakra 1, Muladhara. Okay, sorry, I'm getting distracted. Okay, so then the third level of life vision is what we've been calling desire. Desire is what I would consider to be at the level of like your bliss, your life pattern, your calling, right? So bliss, calling. And at this level, the decisions you make are not driven by necessity or fear. They are driven by, for lack of a better word, love. Love, right? And what is a decision driven out of love? It's a decision. It's a decision you make for quote unquote no good reason. I can't explain why. I know he's a jerk. I just love him to pieces, right? He's like a brother to me. I do anything for him. It makes no sense, but I just I just worry about him all the time. Okay. And so when we say for no good reason, what we mean in the vernacular is no reason that falls under the jurisdiction of need or want. Love is a perfectly good reason, right? But it tells you something about our society when we say no good reason does not include a reason coming out of true desire. The other big clue here is that in the profane world, when we use these words, need, want, and desire perfectly interchangeably. There is no distinction, right? But here we're trying to start to draw these distinctions because just to jump ahead a bit, forget about manifestation or not, and forget about anything like New Age, hippy-dippy. Just in the daily sort of prosecution and execution of you living your life, it makes a big difference at what level you are living your life, at the level of need or want or desire. And let me be clear, all three matter, right? If you don't know where your next meal is coming here, you're not going to be thinking about like, how do I make a positive, material difference in the life of the world around me, right? In other words, all three of these levels have their own independent veto. They can veto your ass on any life path you try to go out on. And that's kind of the point. At all three levels, ideally, they are in harmony. They are in, or at least they're just not in conflict with each other. Because when they conflict with each other, they tend to cancel each other out. Another overlay here is just to give you some orientation, is Abraham Maslow, right? So for those of you who are the psych nerds, Maslow's hierarchy of needs. This is like actualization. This is like survival, and then what is it? It's survival, security, relationships, prestige, and then sort of some form of actualization. These 5 levels of actualization. And actualization, and in the years since Maslow's original version, his protectors and alakites and apologists have said, well, no, actualization, I don't think he even used the word actually. They've made this more and more skirting toward a higher and higher spiritual, much more than he originally kind of, and that's fine. You can evolve it. There's no problem with that. But originally, when he laid the system out, it wasn't his system of like how things should be. This was his observation, because he was a therapist. He talked to thousands of patients. It was his de facto observation of the pattern of what people stated they lived for. And so when you looked at that list, all of that stuff was right in here. So the Maslow hierarchy is here. As we've gotten more conscious in New Age, the Maslowians have tried to push this more in this direction. But as Joseph Campbell once said, specifically about the Maslow thing, when he read these 5 levels, he was like, these 5 things, survival, security, relationships, prestige, and self-development, right? Self-development, like I want to develop. It's not even like I want to do what, my calling is. I just want to develop. I want to be like more actualized, whatever even that means. Campbell's famous comment was, these 5 things are the things a person lives for. I mean, the person who lives for these 5 things is the person who has nothing to live for. They're a zombie. And he said this in talks in the 70s, and there was such a pushback, he stopped. He started using like follow your bliss, which is more of the carrot version than the stick. But he was like, people who live for just that are zombies because they have no sense of this. Right? They have no sense of their mythic pattern. They have no sense of their archetype. They have no sense of what they would die for. Right? And if you don't know what you would die for, then you can have no idea for what you are living for. Right? If you just live for need and want, and this Maslowian kind of stuff, not to be shamey about it, but it's just an observation. It's like if I were to live for nothing more than that, then I would be no better than just kind of a glorified animal. Right? Any given animal will do this. And there's nothing wrong with that. It's like this is 80% of the world. This is, 80% of me, right? But really, this sort of impulse toward the divine, which to me is really the thing that sort of separates us from the animals. Not that we need to be separated, is this sense of desire of like, what am I here for? And once I realize the pattern of what I'm here for, and I'm gripped by that mythic form, by that pattern, by that archetype, then these 2 things will start to fall away, right? I will not worry about what people think about me. I will not worry prestige. I will not worry about even relationships. I'll give up my old friendships when I go in a new direction, toxic, or not. I'll give up any sense of security, and I will even give up survival, right? The military, for instance, a properly sacred, sacralized military, not just the profane military, is a prime example of this. There's perfectly good, workable, functioning humans putting themselves in harm's way, right, for the sake of something that is bigger than them. They give up their Maslowian sense of survival for that. So you do see it. It is, it is, as they say, a thing. Okay. And then the third overlay that's just kind of interesting, because I know many of you are thinking about like job transition is need. Let me just clear this. This is job. This is career. And this is calling, right? Job, I just need money to pay the rent, pay the bills. Career, I'm making money, but I also want to be known for something, right? I want to win that Nobel Prize in literature. I want to win an Oscar, so I have prestige and people will love me and worship me, and I'll feel more worthy of love, right? Calling is, I'm an artist, I do this work, but purely in the Joycean form of art, where it is pure expression. It's not communication, which means if I make this sculpture and I express the thing that was coming out of me, then that's it, I'm done. I don't give a shit about whether anybody actually sees it or not. It makes no difference to me, right? But of course, if it's real, this is like more along the lines of, say, like a Picasso, right? But Picasso is a great example of he integrated all three, so that, he made money, he got the fame, but his main thing was this. It was led by this. Like when he transitioned from Blue Period to Cubism, it was a disaster for him financially, but he didn't care. And then eventually the rest of the world caught up. But even if it did, like in the case of Van Gogh, the world actually absolutely did not catch up with him when he was alive. But he did it anyway. Once you're at the level of calling, you are beyond the zone of choice and individual free will at the extreme of it. At the extreme of it. Okay. All right. So then, so that's different levels of life vision. The second thing about manifesting your life vision is, so that's the life vision. We want to talk about what manifesting actually means. Okay. And to do that, let me, oh dear. Okay, there we go. Let me talk a little bit about the mechanics of manifestation. Now, this will eventually be like a series of programs probably that like go into detail. We're still figuring out how deep we will go on this, and then how deep we will go for like all of this on each area of life, like career, money, et cetera, et cetera. It's terrifyingly vast, and we're going to try to keep it as simple as possible. So this is just kind of we're just going to skirt the treetops here a little bit. Okay. All right. So let's pick a different color here. So when we talk about manifestation, for me, because I'm biased, right? I want to start with your desire, right? What do you want? What is your calling, right? What is your bliss? What is your meaning and purpose in life? What is it that you would die for at the ultimate? Now, that's a tall order. And in a lot of ways, you can think of when we do healing, it is to address the wounds that keep us in the realm of need and want. And as we do more and more healing, naturally the question then of desire comes up, which is the question of bliss. So people will often do healing, then they'll do bliss, then they'll go back down into healing, go back up. It'll circumambulate here. And then, so you start with want and need, which is fine. And then eventually you get to a clearer sense of your desire. And then to manifest that desire, you ask the question of, and it's not obvious, this is my feeling, my desire, but what then does my desire actually look like? Right? That's the question of vision. Right? What does my desire actually look like? In other words, if I fulfill my desire, what does that actually look like? What is the vision? What is your life? What does the world look like when you have, like, played your hand out, everything turned up aces, like fantastically, and you actually attain your vision? So what's the end result? What's the before and after? Right. So that is the question of vision. Now, here is a further question then. So typically, when all the sort of new age people talk about it, they're like, oh, we're all creators, which is fine. And we want to talk about what you want. And they don't really distinguish. You could want $1 million. You could want your next meal, So there's no discernment on the levels of life vision. And they say, okay, whatever it is you decide you want, just like say it 50 times a day or write it out, just like brute force manifestation. And people's practical experience of that is that sometimes it works and sometimes it doesn't. Like with all snake oil, I mean, not to be, like with all anything. Sometimes it works and sometimes it doesn't. And the reason for that is that if you have not made sure these three things are in alignment, right, where they're all just, alignment's just a fancy word for, they're all pointing in the same direction. So that if this is pointing this way and this is pointing this way, when I move them both forward, they won't cancel out. Right? If what I want is more money and prestige, but my desire points me in this direction, when I move both forward, they will tend to cancel each other out. And I will be, what are the words we use? Stuck, blocked, frustrated, because how can I be the creator when the thing I want keeps like getting frustrated and self-sabotaged? Well, it's because you are the creator. You have these three channels of creation, and they're pointing in opposite directions. So when you gun it hard, you jump out of bed, early every morning, like working your ass off, and things still don't go forward. It's not a punishment of the gods. It's like a transformation of like figuring out what your kind of alignment is, that make sure these things are all pointing in the right direction. So my preference is to start with desire, because that presumes then a bunch of resolution down here. And then to say, okay, if my desire plays out all the way, what does the world look like? Now then, beyond that, this is where we get a little bit super extra fancy. This is where we start pulling in the muse and mythopoetics and myth and all the things, all the delicious, nerdy things we've been talking about, which is, from a method standpoint, the question you ask then is, so this vision that you've articulated, expressed, that has come surging out of you finally after all this like work and reflection, what is the pattern to that vision? Right? What is the, to use another word, what is the archetype? When you find the pattern and archetype of your vision, it allows you to clarify the rest of the details of your vision. Right? So, and once you have the other details of your vision, then you set it within yourself. And then the outer world realigns to reflect it. That's manifestation. So if you've done healing with me, you know that we always say, and we've said it here, that the outer reflects the inner. The outer reflects the inner. And in healing, what we do is we look within, we look at all this spaghetti tangle of mess in the outer world. And we're like, eek, my life is like not the way I want it to be. And then I'm like, okay, don't worry about the outer relationship, the outer parenting, just screw all that for a minute, right? Take the vision of what you see around you and look for the pattern of what that is reflecting within you. Right? It's not victim blaming, right? It's not, and it's hard to talk about it like that, because if something comes from within you, it doesn't mean it's your fault. Like you could have, an illness that's triggered by some genetic thing you inherited. So it does come from within you, but I'm not blaming you, right? Something can come from within you and not be your fault. So when it's coming from within you, you go within in healing. You resolve it, you do all the things we do in healing. And then when that resolves, you have changed the archetype. You feel better within you. And then somehow, by magic, voila, the outer jerk at work disappears over the course of the next few weeks. And in some of your cases, over the course of the next 48 hours. Some of the examples are quite dramatic, right, as you know. And the reason for that is outer reflects the inner. Outer reflects the inner, right? Now, in a healing example, that's not why we do it, right? We do it to have this inner sort of resolution and to stop the war within. But when that happens, a byproduct, a side effect of the inner healing is this outer change in your world, which is effectively de facto manifestation. If you've done the bliss stuff with me, same thing in bliss, we explicitly look for the mythic pattern. That's what that is. That's what we're doing when I say look for the mythic pattern, the things you resonate with. And then we match that to the thing you love to do. And we found the thing you love to do by doing the 120 master list, and from childhood, from all the other, we tease out your desire, we build it into a vision, we look for the mythic pattern, and then we do active reflection in the outer world, right? In the bliss. So those of you who have done this, many of you who've done the bliss program, it's like the macro vision of bliss, the micro vision of bliss, ends up being the outer reflection of the 120 master list from the beginning of the program, filtered through vision and mythic pattern. Okay. So in a way, you could say that healing and bliss are like special cases of this we've been calling it archetypal manifestation driven off and accelerated by the use of pattern and archetype in both directions, inner and outer. So another way to see this is this part here then is healing. This part here is bliss. And this part here is manifestation. Right? Ideally, you go from healing to bliss to manifestation. But then manifestation, you'll hit more walls and obstacles that will drive you back into healing. It's this circumambulatory spiral throughout the rest of your life. Another way to look at this is that this desire and vision is inner feminine, right? The holder of vision. And then once we have the vision, we need to manifest. So the engine that transforms vision into manifestation is the archetype. And that's where here we start loading into inner masculine. Right, sorry about that. Inner masculine and inner feminine interact across the stages of manifestation. She comes up with the vision. He's like, I need to translate it into words I understand, and then I get to work, right? And all of us have inner masculine and inner feminine within us, regardless of our external declared gender. Okay. So what I teach then is at the highest level is this archetypal manifestation. The specific things you've experienced are manifestation for healing and manifestation from bliss. But now it's like people who have gone through basically everything I teach in those areas are like asking about the more general case. And that's why I'm kind of being pushed or led into talking about it at this level as well. So I want to say just a teeny bit more about the levels of life, okay? Because this is an important point, even at the thumbnail level. My bias, and I call all these things biases, and you can bias in a different direction if you want. But what I try to do is I try not to say my way is the right way. I try to say this is my heavy bias, and I'll explain why I'm biased in this direction. And then you can look at my reasons, and you can say, I look at all those reasons, and I go in a different direction, and that's fine. That's perfectly good. So my bias, heavy bias, is to teach at the level of desire. Why is that? Why not teach at the level of need and want? The reason for me is that, first of all, this is calling. This is like the point of everything. This is like the reason why you're on the earth anyway. So why not make sure this is being driven, right? And then these guys should follow in the same direction anyhow, right? In other words, it's like, the arms and legs, the body, the heart, the mind, feed into what hopefully are enabling, I'm just making this up, enable the soul, enable the meaning and purpose of your life, right? The point of being on the earth is not just to eat, drink, and be merry and, be the alpha ape, and then live out your life. There's a thing beyond that at the meta level you're meant to do when you're here. And I say that with such certainty is because when people get clear and resolved here, they all 100% of the time naturally move up to this level. They always ask this next question of like, okay, I have all the money I want, everything's secure, everything's fine, everything is happy. Why am I here? Why am I here? It's not a luxury. It's the point of it all. It's not a luxury any more than, this like massive plant flower thing in the jungle exists, and one of the things it does, it blossoms this single jungle flower, right? Is that single jungle flower a luxury, or is it the point of the whole affair, right? And my view is that it's the point of the whole affair. So that's one reason. And then the other reason is just from a purely brass tacks practical matter. If you go just by need and want and you're driving forward and your vision is like, I want to be the best lawyer in real estate, right? And the pattern is, or I want to be the best sports agent in sports management. And my pattern is Jerry Maguire, and I want to be just like Jerry Maguire. And my reflection is I'm going to have friends like Jerry did. I'm going to have clients like Jerry did. I'm going to make speeches like show me the money like Jerry did. Blah, 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 blah. So that's fine. There's nothing wrong with that. The only issue is that need, want, and desire, they each have a veto. They each have a veto. And if you live your life below this line, and you never even turn over the card of what your higher desire is, you have no idea if this Jerry Maguire path is in harmony with your desire or is in direct conflict with your desire. And it's a coin toss. Nobody knows. I mean, if you don't know, nobody else is going to know, right? And so you're kind of driving in the dark with no headlights, right? And people who go straight through and they fulfill the Jerry Maguire or whatever it is, it's a stupid example. They're like, oh, I was fated to do this. Well, maybe this kind of was also happened to be in the same direction. But where they're stuck, they're like, I'm doing everything right and the next guy is advancing, I'm not. Why is that? It's possible that your higher desire points in a different direction, right? Even anything, legal, accounting, investment banking, there are always people there who are like, oh my gosh, she was born to do this. Look at her. She's like hacking away on the battlefield, laughing and smiling and singing while she's doing it. Like clearly all three are aligned in a case like that. And other people, it's like they're making tons of money, they're successful, and they're always angry, they're pissed. They have ulcers, they can't get out of bed, they can't sleep. I mean, it's not rocket science, folks, right? It's like okay, there's probably some conflict. And desire, need, and want is a lens for doing that. So I'm like, at the very least, let's just turn over the card, see what it is. If you want to stuff it down after that, you can still stuff it down, but let's just get more information. I'm a business guy. I like more data. I like more information before I make my big life decisions. And that's the trick. This is never inert. This always manifests in whatever direction it's supposed to manifest. Another way of saying it is, whether you believe in this manifestation, new age, mumbo jumbo or not, you are always still manifesting. The car of your life is always still going at 100 miles an hour, whether you are actively steering or not. The GPS is set. It was often set when you were 7 or 8 or 9 years old, and you're running, right? You're running. And the question is, do you want to look at the GPS or not? Right? Do you want to look at the destinations of the GPS that were attempted to be edited out by your parents and the adults around you when you were a kid? And when you find those edited out GPS destinations, like, what are you going to do about it? Right? Despite the ridiculous analogy, that is the question of our life, right? That is the drama of our life, how we prosecute that question. Okay. So let me just go through my notes here, see what else I wanted to say. The key to this, transforming desire and vision into manifested outer reflection is pattern. Archetype, right? This is why dream and mythopoetics, fairy tale, myth are so powerful. You don't have to reinvent the wheel, right? When you dive into the world of archetype and myth and metaphor, you are able to draw on the entire library of collective human experience. This is why, like, even English lit as a humanity, liberal arts in college, is a great, springboard for like anything else you want to do, even if you want to be an engineer, because it gives you this power of being fluent in the language of pattern. Nobody really explains it like that because we've lost so much of these values, right? But that to me is the real reason. You can draw on the entire library of collective human experience from the dawn of recorded history, right? As encoded in the enduring pattern and archetype that have been passed down to us, right? The things we use are Jonah the whale from the Bible, right? Odysseus and Tiresias from 3,000 years ago, Greek tradition, Hindu tradition, Catholic tradition, Celtic, right? Native American, African, Aboriginal, traditional culture archetypes. All of these are part of our collective human heritage. And with these patterns, the deeper and larger your library is, the more different patterns you can pull to help you diagnose, clarify, identify, and understand just what freaking pattern is at work in your own life. What pattern your own life happens to have been fashioned after. And then once you have that pattern, a pattern is a map. Right? Once you have that map, you can really step on the gas and accelerate the manifestation of your life, because you don't have to slow down at every intersection to ask directions and get your bearings and reassess. You know where you're going. You just crank on through the small towns between you and your next destination, because you literally know where you are going in life at a very high level, at a level of desire, love, and bliss. Which, by the way, right? Desire, love, and bliss. Let's just be clear here. This level, desire, love, bliss, is sacred. This level, need, want, fear, threat, control, is profane, right? And as an advocate and shameless evangelist of the sacred, my heavy bias is to run your life at this level. Make sure these are not in conflict. If they are, there's a million ways to make money. There's a million ways to get prestige and to have people ooh and ah over what you do. So this is the more flexible thing. This is the thing that, you were called to do on this earth. So there's ironically less flexibility here. And if you do this and you happen to still want to make money and not be ashamed of yourself, that's just tons of ways to make that happen, right? So the most powerful manifestation happens in the precinct of the sacred, not in the precinct of the profane. And we know this when we look at the nature of sacred and profane, right? So we say, oh, this life levels thing follows the pattern of sacred and profane. So you find the pattern and then you look at the pattern to get more clues about this pattern that you're running. So here's an example. So when we say, sacred and profane, so what does that mean? One side's sacred, one side's profane. One side is sacred, one side is profane. And when you ask a question of, well, given that, which one should go first? Well, then one way to do it is you look at the pattern of sacred and profane. And when you look at the pattern of sacred and profane, sacred always comes first. The temple is always built first, and then the marketplace springs up around it. The temple never looks for a marketplace to put itself in the middle of. The temple always comes first. The sacred always comes first. That's why here then, we take the learning from the pattern, the archetype, and then bring it back to bear on our actual situation. And in our actual situation, we say, well, this is sacred, this is profane. We know from the other side that sacred comes first. So what if we made desire come first? And if you did that, things would work out pretty well, right? So that's an example of how to use the pattern to arbitrage almost, right? It's like, what's the example we always use? It's like doing a jigsaw puzzle. It's like doing a jigsaw puzzle while you're looking at the picture on the box. Now, I know you jigsaw aficionados are like, oh, that's cheating. Well, this is life, and you only have one, wild and precious life, and the clock is ticking. So, and there's no ruling. You're not going to get punished for cheating, right? When you use archetype. So go crazy, right? Go crazy. Look at the box, every single piece. So you look at the box, you look at the pattern, and then you look at a given piece, and you're like, this could be over in this area, right? And you start to sort out the jigsaw puzzle of your life using the power of pattern. So the pro tip here is that when you're in reflection, right? And this is the last thing because we're running short on time. But this is just so nerdy fun. So one way to do this is So you've identified the pattern, okay? And the pattern is incompletely reflected in your outer world. Because it hasn't been clear and these things have not been fully aligned. So your bliss pattern is imperfectly reflected in the outer world. How do you accelerate the completion of its reflection in the outer world? The way you do this is, imagine the pattern you see is an elephant. And there's a trunk to the elephant. Please don't show this to my artist daughter. She'll be like mortified at how bad an artist I am. Okay, so that's my elephant. Apologies to elephants everywhere. So you're like, my pattern is an elephant. And every elephant has a trunk. And in my outer reflection, I don't see any trunk. Where's the trunk? I'm like, I'm a nincompoop. I'm a horrible. Maybe it's not really my bliss. I don't know. Okay, not to worry. Because you have a vision of the trunk, okay, you discern and deduce that your pattern, well, it's a trunk. So it could be an aardvark. It could be a porpoise, maybe, or it could be an elephant. Then you do more reflection, you do more research, you do more work, you do more questioning on my desire and vision, like we do in bliss. And then you're like, no, it's not an aardvark, it's an elephant, Great. Now you've got the pattern. And you're like, but there's no trunk in my outer world. I'm a failure. It's like, no, don't worry. Just like the jigsaw puzzle. If you don't see the trunk, and that's what you're most familiar with and excited about, if you concede that the pattern is an elephant, you can also look for things that look like an elephant's foot, like an elephant's tail, like an elephant's ear, like the grayness of the elephant's skin. And chances are you'll see something like that in the outer world. Low-hanging fruit, we call it in the consulting world, low-hanging fruit. That's already, just by accident, already manifesting in your outer world. Because it's just so easy. Because for the foot to manifest, it's completely in alignment with need and want. The foot makes money. Everybody loves the foot. They buy the foot hand over fist. So the foot of your elephant pattern manifests in spades. So because you know the foot is a part of your larger bliss pattern, you see this thing you're doing. It's like, okay, this part of your job, don't quit it. Keep going. It's a part of your bliss. I mean, it's a longer road to like everything to meet up and put together in the final jigsaw puzzle. But because you're looking at the box of the jigsaw puzzle, you know this foot is part of the pattern. So the pro super advanced tip is, metaphorically, you grab that part of your life, the foot, and you pull it. You pull it. You pull on it aggressively. You keep doing more of the same along the pattern of the elephant. And eventually, the entire rest of the elephant gets pulled through. It's like a fabric or a Kleenex. I only want the trunk because I'm so excited about the trunk. I only see the foot. So just take the foot, pull it, and eventually you get the trunk as well, right? It's all about the physics of pattern and reflection. And once you have that, there's all kinds of ways you can exploit the physics and mechanics of it to accelerate your bliss, right? Like for me, right? For me, my overall pattern is, there are certain mythic forms that I follow the pattern of. But for me, like the goal of the pattern is to, and I said this before, is to restore the power of the sacred in our world, right? That's what I care about. Now, a year ago, if you had asked me about this, I would have said sacred spaces only in person, only in like, people who have been initiated, they've done a bunch of programs, they can come in. It can't just be people off the street and it's got to be in person. A year ago. That's what I would have said. Right? Now you're a year and a global pandemic later. I have been pushed to realize that it is okay to do it online. But for me, the sacred is the key. The thing that I was like, okay, I still need to work on sacred space. So regardless of the how, which is in person and people who have done all this preparatory stuff, right? I went back to the what, right? what is the desire and vision? What is the elephant trunk? Which is a space, sacred, a space devoid of fear, threat, and control. Well, I'm like, well, shit, I mean, can we try to do that online? Can I try to do that online with people who have never heard of me? They just walk in off the street on Facebook or whatever. And we tried it, and it, so far 19 sessions in, it seems to be working all right. Right, so that's pulling on the foot to bring in the rest of the elephant. You know what matters and what does not matter, right? Because you have the pattern, so you can move fast and make clear, strong decisions very, very quickly. So that's it. That's all I really wanted to say about this manifesting your life vision thing